Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the show. I'm so excited about today's guest, and I can't wait for you to hear her story and her amazing wisdom. Daina, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Magali.
I'm so excited to have you. So for anybody who isn't familiar with you and your story, could you please share with us who you are and what journey has led you to be doing the work that you do today?
Yes. So I am a nutrition therapist master, and I typically work with health-minded women who are looking for data-driven solutions to improve their gut health and skin health, and particularly acne. So acne is what brought me to holistic nutrition, and my whole quest for figuring out what was causing my acne actually led me to realizing it's all about gut health. Definitely was for me, and that's the clientele I work with. We just work on improving gut health to improve skin health. So my journey started, really as a teenager. I never had great skin. It was never horrible, but it was always blemished. So it was never clear. And even as I became older, so a young adult, still wasn't clearing. And I was doing all the right things. I felt like I was eating well, I was exercising, I was drinking enough water, I was doing all the things, but the breakouts just kept happening. And they were really severe around, especially my cheek and jaw area. And there were a couple other health issues that I didn't think about being related, but I also had really bad energy. So I was a person literally falling asleep at a party, could not get through a movie no matter what time of day it was. I was falling asleep. I just thought it was normal. But now looking back, that was so much related to poor gut health and just something being out of balance in my body. And then just digestive issues that, again, I thought were normal. I thought it was normal to have Pepto-Bismol and chug it once in a while. I thought it was normal to get bloated after most meals. So these issues they were just lingering, and I didn't know what to do. So I started experimenting with my diet and realized that changing my food intake changed my skin a little bit. It didn't totally clear up, but I noticed differences. So that's when I really started getting into holistic nutrition, realized I could study this, and became a nutrition therapist master. And that's my favorite clientele, is working with other women who have skin conditions and gut issues.
I love that. I'm curious, whilst you were younger struggling with acne, did you try any of the products out there? As a lot of us usually think that it's external and that products can fix it.
Oh, yes. So I didn't ever opt for any really strong, medical grade therapeutics. I definitely tried all the things you could buy at a drugstore, whether it was the Clearasil or what a Proactive, all that stuff. I definitely tried. When I went to a doctor, dermatologist basically didn't give me anything to do. My OBGYN, so she just recommended I go on birth control. She thought it was related to my hormones. That didn't help at all. So it was all these Band-Aid solutions. Nobody was talking about, why am I getting acne? So that's the mission I went on to figure out for myself.
I love that. So a lot of us find this later in life. Is this from a career perspective? Did you do this right away? Walk us through that trajectory a little bit, because a lot of the people in this world that I've spoken to are found it later when they had already had, a start of a different kind of career.
Oh yeah, totally. I was a civil engineer. So I was doing civil and environmental engineering. I went to grad school. I was really burnt out from doing engineering and just wanted a break. So I ended up shifting into the restaurant industry, wanting to work with a little more sustainability assessment, just looking at the whole process of food manufacturing, agriculture. So I was already involved in the food world when I discovered holistic nutrition. So it's kind of everything fell into place. Even though engineering was good and it gave me a good skill set, I definitely have no interest in going back into civil engineering. But it was definitely a total career change. And it was scary. It was scary because I was in my late 20s, with a master's degree in civil engineering. And I'm like, nah, I'm going back to school and doing this holistic nutrition thing. But so worth it. I'm really glad that I did it.
Yeah. And it makes sense that you, in a way, right, the food, even though it was very different, still gave you a background in that world. So that's really cool. Okay, so for somebody who is I maybe have acne, had no idea that it could be coming from my gut, can you talk to us a little bit more about how that works?
So basically, so much in the body relates to gut health. So whether you're suffering with debilitating migraines, or you have joint pain, or you have sleep issues, so much of it goes back to the gut, just because the gut is where we absorb our nutrients. And you could be eating the most beautiful diet, but if you're not able to actually absorb that food, you're out of luck. So that alone is really important. The other thing that happens with imbalanced gut health is that there's actual imbalances. So some kind of pathogens. So whether that's bacterial imbalances, parasites, yeast, I mean, all this stuff could be happening, causing inflammation in your body, which then expresses in different ways. For some people, their weak point, their Achilles heel is something like skin. That was me. For another person, it could be thyroid issues. For another person, it could be migraine. So it really depends on the person, but it's really that inflammatory response because at its core, acne is inflammation. And so if you are struggling with acne, that is your body saying there's some kind of inflammation happening. Where is it coming from? We need to find the root cause.
I love that. So you talked about being data driven at the beginning. How do you help people that you work with and even the journey you want on yourself to figure out the data and where things are coming from?
Yes. So I was doing a lot of throwing spaghetti at the wall. I was trying everything. So I was putting myself on protocols. I was trying the products, whether they were natural or, buying brands that were high quality. So I was experimenting so much and kind of getting results, but not really. But in the end, just wasting so much time and money on trying to figure out myself because I was so stubborn about it. I just wanted to figure it out. And looking back, I realized I could have saved so much of that energy by just running testing. So functional testing is going to be different than what like a conventional doctor might run, just a normal blood test or something like that. What I really like to use is stool testing and food sensitivity testing just to get to the core of it, figure out what is happening. So with a stool test, you can actually see what I mentioned with those pathogens. You can literally see the data of what kind of bacteria are out of balance. Is there a parasite? Is there yeast overgrowth? I mean, all these things can be really common in skin conditions. So that's one thing. And then we use that data to be able to implement some kind of supplement protocol. So using herbs to make sure that we can tackle some kind of overgrowth and make sure we rebalance the gut. And then the other test I really like to run is food sensitivity testing, because especially with something like acne, you want to know what foods you're potentially sensitive to. So what kind of foods are causing inflammation in your body? And they can be healthy foods, which people kind of forget about. Like it could be avocados or apples or almonds, things like that. And you might be eating that every day thinking, oh my gosh, these foods are so good for me. But in your body right now, they're causing inflammation. So you really want to take that inflammatory response down so that your skin, your gut can heal.
Yeah. I went through, as you know, because we've worked together, a lot of different protocols and a lot of different things. And one of the things that at the time I didn't understand when you're taking the food out is that the food isn't the culprit. Can you talk more about that aspect and the fact that eventually you do want to bring those foods back in?
I'm so glad you asked about this. Exactly. You can't blame the food. It's really what is happening is your immune system is a little bit out of balance and is reacting to things it should not be reacting to. And that happens from the gut being irritated. So, you may have heard of leaky gut or intestinal permeability. And this happens when there's inflammation in the gut. And what starts to happen is when you eat food, undigested proteins are leaking into your bloodstream, which they're not supposed to be there. So you're not supposed to have food in your bloodstream, but your immune system sees it and starts reacting to it. Basically like alert, alert, what is this stuff in the bloodstream that shouldn't be here? What is this foreign invader? And then your immune system starts to mount a response to it. So it's not really the food's fault. It's just because the gut was inflamed, that food is getting through, your immune system starts reacting. And exactly as you said, the goal is to be able to get my clients to eat, hopefully every food, but at least as much variety as possible. Because we just have to work on getting that gut sealed up, making sure that we're all in balance there, and then reintroducing those foods when the immune system is no longer going to get triggered.
And I know you're maybe not going to, this is not a question that can be answered. So the answer is probably it depends. But how long in general does it take for us to be able to heal our gut and to be able to start reintroducing those foods?
Yeah, it does depend. But the most common approach I take with my clients is about a 3-month mark. So for 3 months, we go on a supplement protocol, depending on what your stool test results found. We take out those foods that showed up as inflammatory in your food sensitivity results, really just let your body rest and heal. And then after those 3 months, start to reintroduce those foods. And with any reintroduction, you do want to be systematic about it. So not just, putting everything all in at once and calling it good, because what if you have a reaction, you won't know what you reacted to. So we just do it systematically. So introducing one food at a time, waiting a couple of days. There's a whole process I take my clients through. So just to make sure that, okay, that now is a good food. It's a green food. Your gut has healed. Your immune system isn't flagging it anymore. We can incorporate back in your diet.
Yeah. And I asked that question because for me, there was different levels also, right? And so how, if somebody is feeling good and they've gone through some kind of protocol, is there a before and after in terms of also lifestyle changes and things you need to just keep working on? Or is stool testing something that you would recommend people do like annually? How do we also kind of live in this new world of now we've got this data and like at my next annual checkup at my doctor, that's not something that they're going to be looking at or data that they're going to be getting necessarily. So, is this something that you recommend then be a part of the way that you check in with your body and how you're doing?
Oh, that's such a great question. It depends on the person. If you're someone who has struggled with a lot of gut issues and then you're feeling that symptoms are creeping back, I would recommend doing maybe annual gut testing, maybe every 2 years or so. For annual testing, I would lean more on doing blood chemistry. So comprehensive blood chemistry and making sure that you're keeping on top of that. So that's definitely something I would recommend to do annually, which I do with some of my clients. But for the gut testing, another thing to consider is big life events. So for example, maybe in the near
Mm.
future, I'll be trying to get pregnant. So I just want to make sure that my gut health is good so I can pass on a good microbiome to my future baby. So me and my partner, we're actually going to do our GI maps in the next couple of weeks just to see what's going on, put ourselves on a protocol, just to make sure that our health is really dialed in so we can just give our future family the best options possible.
Yeah, I love that. It's really thinking about it from like a preventative method or way of thinking as opposed to like, oh my gosh, I'm so bloated or I have all these symptoms or how do I fix it now? I think you touched on this a little bit at the beginning, but talked about the fact that a lot of people think acne is hormone related and that you get put on birth control and things like that. Is there ever a time where it is hormone related, or is it really the first place to go is the gut?
It can be hormone related, but the way I like to think about it is hormone health is so related to gut health. And a big part of that is because in the gut microbiome, there are enzymes that exist that actually detoxify estrogen. And that's a big part of hormonal imbalances is that estrogen gets really high and we have that estrogen dominance relative to our progesterone. And that's when women have a lot of symptoms. So they get PMS, they get acne, they get heavy periods. And so that is really related to gut health. So, it can be hormone related, but I would say most of the time it's going to be related to the gut because the gut is so related to hormones.
Yeah. And for somebody who maybe listened to this and is like, oh, she's talking about PMS and all these things, like these are symptoms that I have. Are there foods that you recommend if that's something that somebody is experiencing?
Oof. I mean, omega 3s are really good just for hormonal health. So you can either take supplemental omega 3s or eating like high fatty fish is a really good source. Some plant-based options that aren't as good to absorb, but that would be things like walnuts, chia seeds. So that would be one good option. I would say in general, just healthy fats. So also eating things like eggs with the yolk is really good. Making sure that you're using, high quality olive oil in your cooking. And then enough protein is another big thing that I see a lot of women who struggle with hormonal issues not get enough of, especially at breakfast. So I would say if you're struggling with any hormonal imbalances, make sure to really focus on healthy fats and protein. And then complex carbohydrates. You don't want to be super low carb because if you're already struggling with hormone issues, it could just be a really big stressor on your body to go low carb. And as women, we definitely need carbohydrates, especially at certain parts of our cycle. So just making sure that you are having carbohydrates, but making those complex carbohydrates your choice. So starchy vegetables are my first choice. If you can tolerate grains, you can go for whole grains. A lot of women struggle with grains, so that's one to be cautious about. Legumes like beans and lentils are great. And then if you do find that they cause a lot of issues like bloating, that is definitely a bit of a red flag of let's check your gut health because you shouldn't get super bloated after eating beans and legumes and things like that.
Yeah. You mentioned that a lot of women might not be able to tolerate grains. Is there a reason behind that?
Grains in general, so not only women, just people in general, they're just inflammatory oftentimes. So especially if your gut health is compromised, grains can be inflammatory. I do see grains come up as a sensitivity. And then for certain conditions, so whether that's thyroid related is a really big one. So especially with hypothyroidism, you really want to be cautious with gluten. Gluten in general is a hot topic, and I like most of my clients to avoid gluten unless we definitely know they don't react to it. But if there's one grain that I would recommend avoiding, it's definitely any gluten grain. So wheat, barley, rye, those types of grains.
Yeah, this is something that in our work together, I had like known that gluten was probably part of the cause, but it wasn't until I tested my thyroid that it was like, oh, okay, this is like really something that you need to get off of. And even in like the short amount of time, seeing the inflammation in just like my face and around my belly, there is this, I don't know, I think some people might call that water weight or used to think it was water weight, but is that inflammation linked to that? For me, it was like, oh, wow, a few months of not having this was so clearly part of the issue.
Yeah, water retention is definitely a sign of inflammation happening from food. So another way to test that, because you're so in tune with your body, you can tell like, oh, my face isn't as inflamed and I can feel it. It's, getting better. For other people, easy ways to tell is how your rings fit. So if you feel like you're waking up and your rings are tighter than usual, that's a good sign. Or if you go on a cleaner diet and your rings are looser, that's a really good sign that, okay, things are improving. But I love that you mentioned, people think, oh, I don't react to gluten because I don't get any digestive issues. That does not cover gluten issues. So it could be nothing related to your digestion. Your digestion could feel 100% fine. It could be completely different systemic issues that you won't notice until you cut it out for like weeks.
Yeah. And that goes back to the original question I had asked about time, because I think we're so used to this like quick, let me, get a quick fix. I personally on social media have definitely been victim, if I'm saying that in air quotes, of like the Armor colostrums and the AG1, like athletic greens and all those things. And not to say those aren't necessarily good products and they don't help people, because I'm sure that they have. The way that it was like, your bloating will be away forever and like take this for 1 week. And for me, I'm still years later understanding different things because there's been so many angles of the journey and I'm understanding a lot of things a lot better. But it does take time for us to heal.
Totally. I love that you say that. And I love that you bring up those great products. There's Umra or yeah, the greens powders. They're kind of, when I think of it, like the top of a pyramid. So they're really great. They're awesome to use, but you got to work on all the foundations first and not think that there's some kind of magic cure to your issues. So you don't want to start with the colostrums and the greens powders. That's really good to have once you have your health in balance, but you got bigger fish to fry before investing in those products and spending a lot of money on things that you could make lifestyle diet changes. Your symptoms are going to improve so much more from lifestyle and diet changes than they are from fancy supplements.
Yeah, let's talk about that difference, like supplements versus changing your food habits and lifestyle. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, the first step I always start with my clients is working on diet. So the first thing we do before any supplements come into play is looking at their diet, cleaning things up, talking about timing of meals, how to incorporate more of a certain macronutrient. And I definitely don't do any calorie counting or anything like that, but just looking at a plate and thinking about it like, okay, well, how much of this plate is protein? And just if you can eyeball it, what do we want to focus on? So diet is a really important part, and people feel so much better within usually a week or two of changing their diet. It's kind of unbelievable. And oftentimes clients will email me and they'll say, oh my gosh, I went out this weekend and I went out for dinner and I had drinks and I had sugar and all the things that they were trying to avoid. They feel like crap. And they realize like, oh my gosh, I was able to do this all the time before and somehow I didn't feel crappy, but it's just because that inflammatory response has lowered so much when we go on a clean diet that you start to realize like, oh my gosh, I eat this sugary thing or I eat whatever it might be and I feel so terrible. So diet really can make huge shifts. So you don't have to worry about fancy supplements. You can make really big changes just with diet. With lifestyle, I mean, it's everything from exercise to sleep to stress management. And it's hard. It's hard to incorporate that because we're all so busy. And people often think, I don't have time for that. But the thing is, you really have to make time for it, because if you don't find the time, taking little parts of the day to focus on those things, the healing journey really can't happen, because if your body's stressed, you can't heal. If you're not sleeping, your body's not healing. So if you're not exercising, your metabolism's not working how it should. Your gut health's compromised because exercise is good for gut health. So it's just this whole cycle of things that you have to focus on. So it takes a lot of work, which is why working with a functional practitioner isn't an overnight process. So I work with people usually for at least 6 months, because this is a lot of little baby steps that incrementally build onto each other to really make sure that you're feeling your best.
Yeah, for sure. And I think our wanting to have a supplement fix it comes from the way that the Western medicine has like been teaching us to, you mentioned Pepto-Bismol. It's like, okay, this is like an issue. Let me take this and it makes it go away. And so I think one, we've like lost connection to our body's cues and signals. And we're taught to, it's okay, don't really listen to it because there's this like external thing that's going to help you take it or get rid of it. And I think also in the world that we live in, we're both living in the US, there is a lot of just unhealthy options out there. And it can be really difficult when you do want to go out with friends because you want to have a social life to find the things that aren't necessarily triggering you. Can you talk more about that for somebody that's like, yes, I'm in this journey and I find it really, really hard to go out with friends on the weekends when I can't eat half of the things or go to the places they want to go to?
Oh, that is so hard. And it's kind of crazy to think about. Like, if you're eating healthy, you're the weirdo. And everyone's like, oh my God, that person's eating clean foods and they're eating organic and whatnot. It's just so crazy that that's what it's come to, that it's weird to eat healthy. So that's just one thing that I like to talk to my clients about and just discuss with other practitioners of like, we need to change that. We need to make healthy eating the norm, that it's not weird. But for eating out at restaurants, I mean, talking to your friends beforehand is always a good idea, and making sure that they know that you're on the special diet. And if they're good friends, they will support you. And if they're not supportive, that's a good time to question your relationships, because you want to find people who are supporting you in your health journey or whatever journey you're on. But checking menus beforehand is one thing you want to do, just seeing if there's options you can have. When you're at a restaurant, they're very flexible. So you might feel like there's nothing on a menu, but you can almost craft your own dish. So it does require you to speak up and feel maybe that you're that difficult client or difficult customer, but it's really not that hard and they're used to it. So hopefully your friends are accepting. The restaurants that you go to should be flexible. And if you're ever going to gatherings, which is another big problem people have when they're on a strict protocol and they go to a party and they don't want to ask for special meals, whether that's gluten-free or dairy-free or whatever it might be, bringing your own dish and just having something that you packed in case you can't eat anything there, you can just bust it out, maybe make enough to share, and that's going to be your dinner. So it requires planning ahead, but it's not forever. This isn't going to be like the next 10 years of your life where you're having to do this. It's just usually a couple months. So it's very doable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I like that you mentioned that. It's meant to be temporary and for us to be able to heal in order to. And then I think what you said about relationships is so important, because if within a few months also your friends and family are seeing you get better, then they want that for you, right? They're excited, and you might even inspire them to check in on their own health. So I love that you said
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
So are there any other specific things that you recommend, maybe outside of foods, just in terms of lifestyle for somebody who is just not feeling their best? You talked about having low energy and how it was linked to gut health for you. But for somebody who's like, I'm just feeling tired all the time, I like 3 p.m., I need that cup of coffee. What are some maybe lifestyle changes that they can try?
Yeah, I would say blood sugar regulation is really something that we want to focus on. And luckily, it's trending big time. All the wellness people are talking about it, which is great. So that's a really big reason for energy being low, especially in the afternoon, feeling energy highs and lows, feeling anxious, moody, all these things that a lot of people struggle with. It's very much related to your blood sugar. So you're basically just not eating balanced meals. So even though this does relate back to diet, there are lifestyle factors too that you can incorporate to balance blood sugar. But I would say just, again, focusing on good protein, good fats in your meals, not going too heavy on things like grains or processed foods. So just really processed food should be completely minimal in the diet. Anything sugary should be minimal. So focusing just on balanced meals will be really helpful for blood sugar regulation. And then there's little tips like taking a little walk after meals really helps just get all of that blood sugar that's rising in your system, just having a place for it to go. So into your muscles, because you're moving. Another option is just not having sugary or high carb foods alone. So if you're going to have something healthy like an apple, maybe not having an apple alone, but having it with some nut butter or some cheese if you can tolerate it. Or if you're eating a meal, don't start with the starch. So if you had like chicken, rice, and broccoli, don't start with the rice. Instead, start with the chicken and the broccoli and then kind of save the rice for the end of the meal. So little lifestyle tips like that are meal related really help with something like blood sugar dysregulation.
Yeah, it's so funny that you bring up blood sugar because I saw an acupuncturist recently and I had been wanting to get acupuncture for a really long time. I find all of these modalities are so helpful together. And she checked my pulse and she was like, "Do you like check your blood sugar levels?" And I was like, "I don't have like a continuous glucose monitor, or I've never pricked my finger. I've done it in like blood tests here and there." And she was like, "Just like check it out." And I opted to not do the continuous glucose monitor, but to just do like the thing that you can buy at Walgreens that originally was for people with diabetes. And it's been very eye opening. I'm only on like day 5 of doing it, but I hadn't realized how much actually I'm not eating enough protein at night. And therefore, when I wake up, my blood sugar is crazy spiked. And last night I had more protein for dinner. And this morning it was much lower. So yeah, it was really crazy to like see that. And now, like that, I'm, pricking the finger and then I'm like, oh, I'm feeling like a little tired or a little hangry, even though I had like lunch not that long ago. But those are things that are difficult to tune into when you're like in a busy day and you've got calls or recording podcasts or whatever it is. You're not necessarily tuning into that. And you're like, okay, well, my, breakfast is at 9, my lunch is at 12, my dinner is at whatever. So yeah, it can be really helpful to kind of like see and then realize, oh yeah, this is how I'm feeling.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, using that data, especially in real time with blood sugar, that's awesome. And it's so hard with all the variables every single day. Maybe you didn't sleep as well. Maybe you didn't exercise the same way. Maybe you were more stressed. Maybe your lunch didn't have enough protein. It's just like, oh my gosh, the amount of things that we have to think about is crazy. So it's really good for you
Mm-hmm.
to be able to sort of start to tie things in by looking at your blood sugar, especially when you tweak things like, okay, let me have a little more protein at dinner. And oh my gosh, it looks so much better. So that's awesome.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed is I have one coffee a day. It's usually a latte with almond milk and like maybe a little coconut oil or protein powder if I make it at home. But if I have it out and it's been really sunny the last days in San Francisco, and so I had an iced coffee the other day, and obviously I don't control what kind of milk they put in. And just the difference of the milk, because I think there's probably a little bit of sugar in their almond milk that they use at that place. The blood sugar spike was so different, even though there I had like a walk because I walked there and I walked back. So I know there could be so many different factors, but I think that I'm so glad you brought it up because I think something that's really underrated.
Hmm. Totally agree. Oh my gosh, it's such a priority with all my clients working on blood sugar. Again, something you could do without testing, something you don't need supplements for. It's so much related to diet and food.
And it's also really helpful in terms of when we think about how many people have type 2 diabetes, especially in this country. And like when you're on the cursor, it can be really easy to reverse if you are making these different kind of changes, which again is so cool that food and lifestyle can help you do that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I love it. So at the end of every podcast, I end with different questions to ask my guests. And so I'll ask you some of those. And there's no like rush or anything. It's not like a rapid fire. The first one is, how do you unlock your vitality these days?
Ooh, how do I unlock my vitality? I think creative tasks, which I've finally gotten more inspiration. I used to make jewelry. I'm a silversmithing, and it's just been collecting dust in my garage. And I've only recently had this new inspiration to pick it back up, which is really inspiring to be like, oh my gosh, it's been years since I wanted to do this. So I think creative tasks are something that I feel a lot of vitality from.
I love that. That's so beautiful. The next one is a fun one. What is on your nightstand?
Oh, my alarm clock, my mouth tape, and my eye mask.
Love that. We want good sleep. The next one is, what are you saying no to these days?
Oh, that's a good one. I would say tiptoeing around important conversations. I feel like I've been doing that a lot. Just maybe not wanting to hurt feelings, but in the end, it causes more stress because you lose communication. And I just want to be more direct with people. I'm kind of sick and tired of doing this tiptoeing and beating around the bush. So that's something I've been working on over the past couple of weeks of just like, let's just get straight to the point. And we might be a little bit maybe offended at first, but in the end, this is going to build a much stronger foundation for our relationship.
Yeah, that's a really important one. I feel like, especially in adult friendships, it gets easier to not go into those hard conversations because you're not spending like as much time as when you're younger with that person. And so it can be, yeah, easier to be like, oh, well, it doesn't bother me. And I love that. That's really important. And the next one and the last one is, if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Oh, I guess just stop being so hard on myself and knowing that the things that feel big really aren't big. So insignificant, and don't stress about them.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Before we let you go, is there any programs that you have, or can you share how you work with clients so people that might be interested can, and also where people can find you?
Yes. So my business is called Table to Crave. That's going to be my website, tabletocrave.com, my Instagram handle where I'm relatively active. The first step would be to book a free discovery call. So it's a quick call. We can just talk about what you're struggling with, symptoms, what you're looking for, and see if we're a good fit to work together. So that's a really good first step. And then I have some freebies on my website for gut health, acne, just free ebooks to download. So if you're interested to get some meal ideas, just steps to follow, good foods for acne, that's a really good resource.
Awesome. And I'm a very visual person, and I've loved the things you've shared on your social media of actually your own personal journey with acne and like what it used to look like versus now. I think that can be really helpful for people to be like, oh, right, this is maybe where I'm at and where I want to get to. So thank you so much, Daina, for coming on. It was such a pleasure, and I can't wait for everybody to have a listen.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great.
All right. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you loved this episode as much as I did. If you are enjoying the show, please feel free to rate and review, share it with a friend. This is truly how we are able to grow. So whether you are listening on Kajabi directly, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or on Google, any way that you can just share it with a friend, and even through social media, letting us know what you loved about it, what you got out of the episode. And if you haven't yet, you can subscribe or rate and review depending on all the places that you get your podcasts. But I just wanted to say a big, big thank you if this is the first episode you've ever listened to, or if you've been here for a while, or if you've been here since the very beginning. Unlocking my vitality has been a beautiful journey into learning, actually. And this podcast has really helped me learn through different people, through your feedback, through just seeing and hearing beautiful women and the work that they're doing and sharing it with the world. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next week. Bye.